You can only use the word accident when it's something that was unexpected and initially unexplained. But in this case, this was predicted, and anything that's predictable is avoidable.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science. 60 Minutes Australia have added yet another dimension, yet another perspective to this case by including Christine Daewoo, the widow and mother to two of Titan's 5 victims. I'm also glad they gave more airtime to Tell It Like It Is Rob McCullum. You heard him at the beginning of this clip, and he also appears as a much-needed voice of reason in the Titan documentary on Netflix. Tony Nissen seemed to talk so much when interviewed. 60 Minutes spliced together an almost 70-minute segment of Nissen hearing himself speak, and most of those 70 minutes are Nissen defending the science, even now, in hindsight. According to Nissen, the lesson isn't that carbon fiber is the wrong material to use in a deep-sea submersible. I'm not sure what the lesson is, quite frankly, from Nissen's perspective. If that's true, though, I do wonder, do you think someone out there is going to be building another deep-sea sub out of carbon fiber? Is he? In this analysis, we're going to look briefly at Nissen's 3 unbelievable answers to 3 simple questions. Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. If you find this analysis worthwhile, please do hit the thanks button. Thank you to those of you who have. And let's get started. So, number 1, is carbon fiber appropriate? And this question was posed to Tony Nissen.
To those who say carbon fiber is not an appropriate material for a hull to dive to 4,000 metres, what do you say?
I would, in an unprofessional sense, I would say they don't know what they're talking about.
Nissen goes on to say, if they bring some piece of paper to say this won't make it, you'll accept it. All right, how about this photograph? Are the titanium domes damaged? Because look closer. Aren't we seeing both domes in this image? Certainly, the part in the middle didn't just crunch, it also splintered into smithereens, as carbon fiber can and does. Is the carbon fiber intact, slightly damaged, or is there virtually nothing left of the cylinder? When presented with the simple question whether carbon fiber is appropriate, Nissen can't seem to answer with a simple yes or no, because it is a yes or no question. In fact, Nissen spends 4 long minutes making a speech about carbon fiber without really saying anything, except that he appears to hold his own knowledge about the subject matter in very high regard. I do think it's very, very telling that Nissen often butted heads with David Lockridge, and Nissen was only fired in June 2019. Stockton kept him on board until about 18 months after Lockridge was fired in January 2018. According to an article in GeekWire, quote, Lockridge said he also had a rocky relationship with Tony Nissen, who was OceanGate's director of engineering at the time and took charge of the design and development of the Titan submersible. During the early phase of the Titan development effort, the University of Washington's Applied Physics Laboratory provided engineering assistance, but then in mid-2016, that relationship was discontinued. Lockridge said he was frozen out as well. Unfortunately, after the incident on the Andrea Doria, I was phased out of the project completely. And then he says this, I was told everything was going to be getting done in-house with Tony Nissen and his team, who I had no confidence in whatsoever. Well, I can't say I do either. I have to say, if you are at this point, June 2025, and you still don't know that carbon fiber is just the wrong material for a deep-sea submersible, I mean, as a primary component of a pressure vessel, you still want to use carbon fiber to distribute massive compression now, after all we know and you need 4 minutes to answer a question about it, explaining why it's appropriate. Well, I can see why Stockton Rush liked him so much. That brings us to number 2. James Cameron should stick to making movies.
And what bothers me is that, I keep hearing it's carbon fiber. That's the problem. With no technical backing whatsoever. I mean, James Cameron should stick to making movies.
Well, except that James Cameron does have technical backing. He went down to the deepest part of the ocean successfully. Stockton Rush didn't. And so here's a refresher on what James Cameron thinks of this whole notion of carbon fiber.
And he chose the wrong materials and the wrong approach. This thing was going to be a coffin.
Because of the carbon fiber hull.
Exactly, because of the carbon fiber. Certain rules you can't break. And those rules were broken. Several of those rules were broken. The most obvious one was the wound carbon fiber is the wrong material for that application.
Number 3, why did you ignore the warnings?
Can you explain how that contradiction between saying it moves, it popped, it cracked, it was snapping, but we continued? But we thought that was okay. Right.
So the where I was going with the lattice structure in solids, there are processes in solids where
You're welcome to listen to his answer to this question, why did you ignore the warnings, and try to make any sense of it.
I mean, the noise is when you hear it, tapping and banging, and Stockton himself, is pretty alarmed. That's frightening to watch.
It is. Yeah.
What is happening?
Yeah. There's glue is separating and fibers are breaking. It's just that simple.
That's hilarious, but Nissen was sensible enough not to go into Titan. I've listed a few of the main things I disagree with, and overall, I don't think Nissen is really the best person to be interviewing about the Titan. That's just my opinion, but he is right about the notion that an investigation shouldn't only focus on materials and numbers. It should also focus on the company culture at OceanGate and the other individuals who were there passing around the same Kool-Aid Stockton Rush was passing around. I do think the craziest thing about Nissen's involvement is also this idea of an acoustic monitoring system. Firstly, because as the USCG noted, the system did show cyclical fatigue setting in, especially from dive 80 onwards. But of course, even though they had the readings, had the data, they just decided to ignore it anyway. Secondly, what good is an acoustic monitoring system when you can't predict when catastrophic failure is going to take place? It's a little like seeing a car tire is worn through, going bald, and sure, you can tell that something is going wrong, things aren't looking so good, but instead of taking proper precautions, you just put a sensor there, keep on driving, and then wait for the tire to blow. Right, can I share a personal experience with you that I have with carbon fiber? I've got a carbon fiber bike. Even the seat post, as you can see, is carbon fiber. But to hold it in position, to hold the seat post in position, you've got to clamp it down right here inside the tube of the bicycle. And it's such a tricky thing. Clamping it too hard, you rather want to err on the side of clamping it too soft. To tighten it too much actually risks causing it to crack and to splinter. I mean, that is actually how fragile it actually can be. It's not like metal that can deform a little bit and that's resilient and elastic. Carbon fiber is brittle and rigid. So to not appreciate this fundamental aspect in a pressure vessel just shows you, even with an incredible education and vast amounts of technical knowledge, you can still absolutely fail to have basic common sense and a basic level of intelligence to think about a basic setup with sensible reasoning. Some people have it and some simply do not. So, even when you show them the data, they still can't see it. They still can't seem to see it. Elon Musk is a great example of a smart person who isn't smart in all situations. I'm sure that's true of all of us, but it's sometimes a lot more obvious in some than in others. The real danger, of course, is where smart people influence the dumb people around them. And the dumb, even suspecting what they're doing isn't smart, rightly, still take their cue from someone who seems obviously smarter than they are. In situations like that, reality tends to intervene, and when it does so catastrophically. All right, I'm not going to take it further than that. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.